Good morning, Shiloh. Today is the day of new beginnings, a specific time of new life in the Christian church. It's the start of the season of Advent, a 4-week cycle of anticipation and hope leading up to Christmas. It's also a time to prepare our hearts spiritually for the coming of the Christ child. In line with this time of hopeful anticipation, we're starting a new sermon series today. The sermon series is entitled Everything Changes. Now, change happens all the time. The weather changes, our moods change, and the fact that we resist change changes from time to time. As the story goes, there was a long-time member in the church, a large church in New England, who went up to the new pastor and complained about the changes that were happening in the church. He said, "Reverend, if God were alive today, he would be shocked at the changes in this church." Well, surprise. God is alive today. He's living and well, thank you. And I'm sure that he's pleased with the transformation that is happening here at Shiloh. Amen? Our series begins with the life of Zechariah. Zechariah was a devout priest from the lineage of Moses' brother Aaron. We're told that he and his wife Elizabeth were righteous before God and lived blameless lives. Now, to live a blameless life didn't mean that they were perfect or that they didn't sin. It simply means that when they did sin, they repented, asked God for forgiveness, and made sacrifices to God. The couple was seen as a pillar in their community as far as their holiness was concerned. But their culture viewed them as less than righteous because they had no children. Childless couples in their days were seen as having a secret sin that drove a wedge between them and God. Zechariah and Elizabeth had been praying for many years for God to bless them with a child. But now that they were both beyond childbearing years, most likely somewhere in their 90s, the light had nearly gone out on their hope of becoming parents. The assumption was that God had not heard their constant prayer. However, Zechariah was relentless in carrying out his priestly duties and praying for God's guidance. Now, it was a time for the priestly order that Zechariah was a part of to spend a week serving in the temple. One of the most coveted duties of that weekly service was the honor of serving in the inner sanctum called the Holy of Holies. The likelihood of being chosen for this detail in the Holy of Holies was a once-in-a-lifetime, if at all. Zechariah was chosen by lot to serve in this capacity. For this one day, he would be in charge of lighting the incense, the smoke of which would carry his prayers and God and the people's prayers to heaven and to God. While serving in this capacity, the angel Gabriel appeared to him and told him that God would answer his prayer and bless he and his wife with a child. The angel Gabriel told him that his child, a son, would be the forebearer of the Messiah. At first, Zechariah was consumed with fear by the appearance of the angel. None of his contemporaries have ever committed or acknowledged that they had seen an angel in the temple. So why him? Why would he be the first? His fears were turned to shock and unbelief when the angel told him that he would father a child. Like many of us who have prayed for one particular thing for a long time and felt that God had not heard us, Zechariah doubted Gabriel's message, that his message was authentic. So he asked for a sign. Somewhat insulted, Gabriel replies, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. I have come all the way from heaven as a special messenger from God himself, and you want a sign? Okay, you asked for it. The sign is that you will be unable to speak until your child is born." Now, some of you may see this as punishment from God, but actually, it can be seen as a time when Zechariah was given a golden opportunity, the opportunity to repair the cracks in his faith and to prepare his heart and his mind for the coming of his new son. From our standpoint, picture yourself for a moment not being able to communicate electronically for 9 months, only being able to communicate by writing it down or through gestures. Would you use this time as a holy time to focus on your spiritual life, or would you spend that time moaning and groaning about how you had been inconvenienced? Meanwhile, we're told that while Zechariah was in the temple, the people outside waiting were concerned that he was in there for so long. When he finally didn't come out and couldn't speak, they realized that something miraculous must have happened in the temple. Zechariah went home upon the completion of his priestly duties, and Gabriel's message came to pass. When we have an honest-to-goodness encounter with the living God, everything changes. When we have an encounter with the living God, everything changes. It's impossible for our life to remain the same after that. Zechariah was assured that his prayers had been answered. He needed, like us, to be confident in his prayers. Oftentimes, we feel that our prayers fall on deaf ears, but that is not the case. Our prayers are always heard by God. Years after we've stopped praying, God still answers prayers. My wife, Barb, has this thing about small Christian sayings or quotes. If you open our kitchen cabinets, you'll find all kinds of snips of paper cut out of magazines or handwritten, taped to the inside of the cabinet door. One of those clippings reads, "God's 4 answers to prayer: know, grow, slow, and go." Now, if you take out your sermon notes, you'll find that those are on that sheet. The first answer, no, means that God won't grant our wish. Either it's not in our best interest, or It's not in God's ultimate plan for us. The second answer, however, is a bit more interesting. Grow means when God feels we're ready. Now, there have been many times in my life when I've prayed for something and I've been positive that the timing is right, but the prayer just isn't answered. For instance, each year at this time, car dealerships begin to tweak our psyches, and they put these commercials on with this brand new glistening car with a bright, big red bow around it, sitting in someone's driveway. Well, you've guessed it. Each year, I pray that that car will be sitting in my driveway. Now, I'm positive that God already knows that I'm ready for that car. I rationalize that it must be the car dealer who has lost the paperwork in their system, and that's why the car has never shown up. The truth is, it's easy during these times to get frustrated. We feel like God's overlooked us. There doesn't seem to be any answer to our prayers over the days, months, and years as they pass by. Or our situation doesn't improve because, quite frankly, we develop a lousy attitude. And we begin to wonder, is God listening? Am I praying wrong? What have I done? Don't I have enough faith? Is there something in me, some sin in me that I have not repented for? As I read this account of Zechariah, I get the sense that the human thought process has not changed much over time. When something we have prayed for so long just doesn't happen, we have the tendency to give up. We need to have faith and know that God is there with us at all times. In the Old Testament book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 5, God says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." You might want to write down Joshua 1:5 and memorize that for when you suffer during tough times. The third of God's answers is slow, which means in His time. For me, what that means is that I'm truly not in charge. And there are times that are too numerous to mention that I'm very thankful that God is in charge. So let me give you a quick example. As I pass by the bakery in the morning and catch a whiff of those fresh baked chocolate-covered donuts, I turn the car around, pull into the parking lot, jump out, run into the bakery, and stand there dumbfounded. Somebody has beaten me to the punch. The chocolate donuts are gone. Now, I get upset because I really wanted that donut. But God knows, and my bathroom scale tells me that I did not need that donut. This is an example of our cultural expectation of instant gratification kicking in. But let me tell you, God doesn't buy into the instant gratification model. God works in His own time to accomplish His good and perfect will. And His time frame is not in sync with ours.